So now we're going to apply the theory that you just learned in the previous lesson to some actual price action examples. Now, like I was alluding to in that previous lesson, multi-time frame market structure, it really is the key. You know, it's the secret key to figuring this game out, in my opinion. You know, until you really nail this, I would say there's not really much point in going on to learn supply and demand and add in liquidity concepts and looking at your entries and your management and all that fun stuff until you have this really nailed down and you have a very, very firm grasp on, you know, how to read this in the systematic framework that we use, because this really is the backbone. It's going to be the skeleton of your entire, you know, trading strategy moving forward. And you can pile on all of the other fancy concepts that you're going to learn as we progress through the course. But if you don't have this foundation built solidly, it's honestly just going to come crashing down, because you can draw on your supply zones, you can look for your entries, but if you're on the wrong side of the market and you're not managing your expectations of how far price is likely to go, where you're going to be targeting, like there's just no point. You're going to be taking a ton of losses and be scratching your head, and your journey is just going to take years and years longer, you know, if you'll get there at all. Whereas if you can nail this first, you'll be 80% there at least. So yeah, that's kind of my best at trying to give you a little bit of a speech there at the start of this video, just to make sure that you take your time with this. You know, trading is not easy. Hopefully by now I've tried to kind of keep you motivated and inspire you to get there and reach the end goal, but also keep you very grounded and realistic in your expectations. I guess the point I'm trying to make here is you can't just watch this video once or, you know, even 3 times, make a few notes and then just progress forward. Maybe watch it on 2x speed, maybe even just watch the module 3 times. You need to be watching this again and again and again, and then applying it to yourself, to the charts on other pieces of price action examples, and making sure you understand it as best you can. And it's just practice and practice and practice. Like it takes a lot of time to get used to it. Now I'm going to try and help that journey be as quickly and as efficiently as possible for you guys, but I can't do the work for you. You have to do it. Now, when you watch of me, when you watch, or anyone who kind of has a firm grasp of what they're teaching, you know, perform that on a video, it can look quite easy. Go, yep, I get it. I've got this. This is easy, and you skip through to the next stuff. But it's only when you go to do it, especially in a live market where price action is moving, you've got to make emotional decisions with money on the line. That's suddenly when you realize you don't really know, you know, things as well as you thought you did, or as well as you need to do. Okay, so that's my little rant anyway. You know, don't just watch this a few times. You really, really, really need to put in the work with this, okay? But I'm going to try and, as always, try and do my best to sort of keep things relatively simple and then build things up as we go, so we don't overwhelm you from the complete start. So I brought price back on Eurodollar to some reasonably old price action, just to kind of, so we can use some different examples that we haven't used so far in the lesson. So let's kind of just mark out some basic for our swing structure here that we have. So we can see, right, we just paint the picture back a little bit. Had this impulse up, then we had a swing pullback, then we made that swing higher high, swing pullback, right, swing higher high, and then we broke that low to form a swing lower low. So then the swing trend switched bearish at this point. This high then becomes a strong high. Why is it strong high? Well, it took out the low, it did its job. So when price pulls back, what do we expect? We expect that price will not trade higher than this swing high, right? That's the new swing range we're within. So you can see we clearly have a bullish change of character to the upside, but it's just to facilitate that swing pullback. Right, then we have a bearish change of character. Okay, now it's likely we can target this weak low, and then price remains bearish, internal structure remains bearish until we take out that low, right? And then that whole process repeats. Again, we have that swing breaker structure. What do we get? We get that bullish change of character over here, right? And then we have the internal structure shifting bullish to facilitate that pullback. And then what does it do? The internal structure then shifts bearish. Okay, now we can target the weak swing low. All right, that was the swing high at the point. That took out this low, that's the swing high. All right, we have that pullback, and then the internal structure shifts bearish, and now we can target that weak swing low, okay? So that's one time frame we're just looking at. Hopefully you guys should now be very, very, well, pretty damn comfortable with that. Otherwise, I would recommend not proceeding with multi-time frame analysis just yet and going back through the previous lessons, okay? So if we just, let's just kind of mark it on from here on, and then we'll dive into here, okay? So we have that 4-hour breaker structure. We then have quite an impulsive move, and then we have another swing pullback, and then we have another swing breaker structure here, eventually close below. And then we have another swing pullback, another swing breaker structure over here. Okay, and then another swing pullback. Okay, and then we'll just draw on this one last one here. We have that final 4-hour swing breaker structure. Price just about closes below the low there. So Let's use, let's see what we've got here. Let's put this with a solid black line, okay? And then we'll just draw on this because this will kind of help to visualize, I hope, what we're doing here with the swing structure on the 4H. So we have that pullback, swing lower high, swing breaker structure to the downside, pull back up to form that swing lower high, so on and so forth, okay? Price pulls back, but it doesn't breach the strong high, and then we get a break enclosure below, and then again and again, okay? So that's a 4-hour chart, reasonably simple swing structure. All right, I'm not going to get too tricky with fractal and internal just yet. Whilst we're looking at multi-time frame structure initially, kind of just want to keep it to swing structure just so you guys can kind of wrap your head around it. So that's the 4-hour structure. Now what we're going to do is we're going to jump down the time frame, jump down to the 1-hour chart. Now the 1-hour chart, at least at the time we're recording, it's not really a time frame that I use. I kind of jumped straight down to the M15 on my own trading, but I think just for the basis of this video, it can be quite useful because it's not too big of a gap between the 4-hour as it would be if we went down to the M15. But let's kind of zoom into over here, right, and you'll see what I mean. With the 4-hour chart, right, we had nice bearish swing structure, but within that, we know the lower time frames is going to form bullish structure and bearish structure, i.e. changing trend, in order to facilitate those swing pullbacks to then start the next swing leg to the downside. So if we draw this on with a different color, let's maybe make it like, turquoise, right? Okay, just so we can visually see it. So this is a 1-hour chart. Now I know there's nothing in this leg for price to break. So essentially what I'm drawing on here is the 1-hour internal structure. But what you can see, even on the M15, it may have switched bullish. What we're essentially seeing is that lower time frame structure shifting bullish to facilitate that swing pullback. And then what does it do? It breaks that low to form that lower time frame lower low. So now price is likely, or that 4-hour swing pullback is now likely finished. And now this internal structure or this lower time frame structure will likely remain bearish to take out that 4-hour swing low, right? So again, it's what we just went through in the previous lesson. Higher time frame pullback, the lower time frame structure shifts bullish to facilitate that higher time frame pullback. When the lower time frame structure then shifts bearish, so we get the lower time frame lower low, when we broke that higher low to form a lower low, that's a good signal that that higher time frame, so the 4-hour chart in this case, the black line, that's a good signal that that black line, that pullback is now finished, and now we can be ready to target that low. In this case, it's very impulsive, right? And we come to the downside, we form a lot of lower time frame structure, and then we come down here, and now price comes up and it takes out this high, right? So at this point, we now have a higher time frame, a lower time frame higher high, right? When the turquoise line breaks this high, right? We can see that the 1-hour chart then shifts bullish. Now, why did the 1-hour chart shift bullish? Well, it's shifted bullish to facilitate the higher time frame swing pullback, right? The black line, okay? So we know the black line is a 4-hour chart. It formed a swing lower high, swing lower low. Now the lower time frame structure has just formed a higher high. So the lower time frame structure has shifted bullish, but we can look to trade this, right? So we can look to buy these lower time frame higher lows, but we have to manage our expectations of how far price is likely to run, right? We can look to buy this high low here, but are we going to target like all the way up here past this 4-hour swing high? No, of course not, because this is a protected 4-hour swing high. It's a strong 4-hour high because it took out the low. So the 4-hour is bearish. It's currently in the 4-hour swing pullback phase, and the 1-hour chart has shifted bullish to facilitate that pullback. So we can look to buy these 1-hour higher lows, right? And we can look to push it to the upside. But like I was saying, how far is price likely to go? Well, we never know, but we know it's definitely, or our expectation is that it's not likely to break that 4-hour swing high. And it's only likely to be short-lived. So this is where we're going to be much more aggressive with our targets if we're buying and getting long, and we can just target the nearby weak structure, okay? Because we understand that at any point, this 4-hour, so the black line, that swing pullback could now be finished, and then the 1-hour may be ready to switch bearish, which is what ends up happening, right? And that's why when you're trading counter to the higher time frame trend, so when you're trading long against the 4-hour bearish trend, we can do it, but we have to be a lot quicker with our targets, okay? But then once the 1-hour structure or the lower time frame structure shifts bearish, in this case, what's now happened? Well, now it's realigned itself with the overall 4-hour swing structure, okay? So now both the 4-hour and the 1-hour structure are both bearish. So now we can look for shorts, okay, to catch these lower time frame lower highs. And now we can be a bit more, expansive with our targets. We can target this low down here. Why can we target this low? Well, this is the 4-hour weak low, right? It's the 4-hour weak swing low. It's weak because it hasn't broken the 4-hour swing high. So now when we have the 1-hour structure realigned with the 4-hour structure, that's a very good signal that this 4-hour swing pullback is now finished. So now when we're getting short, we can hope, or not hope, we can try and target and hold was the word I was looking for. We can hold our positions or some of our volume to try and target this weak swing low, okay? Because it should have done its job now, and price now should remain bearish in the lower time frames until it takes out that swing low, which is what ends up happening, okay? So if we just kind of zoom out for a little bit, and then let's take, hopefully this will work. It's not what I want to do. There we go, come on and hang on, bear with. There we go. Why is that not working? There we go. I think I've never used TradingView before. So this was kind of, hopefully this kind of reminds you of the diagram that we had in the previous theory lesson, whereby you can see the swing lower low, swing lower high, swing lower low, right? Swing lower high, swing lower low. Now, in order for that price action to happen, for the lower lows and lower highs, what happened on the lower time frame? Well, we had, you can see it, switch bullish, right? We had the lower time frame higher high, lower low. Sorry, I'm getting all mixed up now. Lower time frame higher high, lower time frame higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high. Then what happens? If we just get rid of these lines, then the lower time frame structure shifted bearish, signaling that that higher time frame pullback may now be finished, right? And then it remained bearish for the next impulsive phase, right? The pro swing trend phase, where we got a series of lower lows and lower highs. So after a break of structure, which happens over here, what do we always say? Well, we have to expect a swing pullback, right? After this break of structure, we can expect that next swing pullback to kick in, okay? Sometimes it will happen straight away, and sometimes you'll have these big impulsive moves when the trend is really strong, okay? So when that happens, we can keep continuing to look for shorts from within here, but we have to be very, very aggressive and understand it's a bit lower probability because at any point, that swing pullback can be kicking in. So what you can do is you can follow that lower time frame structure to give you that indication of perhaps when that swing structure is going to pull back. And that's what happens here, right? The lower time frame structure then shifts bullish in order to facilitate that swing pullback. So now the lower time frame makes higher highs and higher lows. Okay, we have a decent enough size of a swing pullback. And then what happens? The lower time frame structure then shifts bearish. That then signals that that higher time frame swing pullback may now be finished. Okay, when we get that break here, and then we can do what? Then we can target the weak swing low. So then we can follow that bearish internal structure, right? We want to be selling those lower highs, those strong internal lower highs on the lower time frame, and we want to target that weak swing low on the higher time frame. Now, once we get that swing breaker structure on the higher time frame, what do we then expect? We then expect that swing pullback. So what can we do? We can look at the lower time frame structure and see if it shifts bullish to facilitate that pullback, right? So let's delete this and kind of go back to where we were. Hopefully I haven't lost you so far, but like I said, watch this as many times as you need and we'll go through tons of examples. Okay, so we had that swing breaker structure over here. Now, the 1 hour high is actually up here at this point, but we're just sticking to 2 time frames for now, so don't confuse you too much. But we will be using more than 2 time frames in the future. We'll be using 3, and you can even see here on a 1 hour chart, essentially that fractal structure, or that internal structure, would be the M15, where you can see we actually shift bullish there. We take out that high, right, to form those higher highs to facilitate this 4 hour pullback, right, and we come up, and then we break that low to form a lower low, okay, to then take out the weak swing low, and then the same thing happens again, right? Then we shift bullish to facilitate the swing pullback, okay, and then this would be the 1 hour structure where we break this low to come down, right, and then we come down again. But even within there, you can see the M15 structure, it would be like this, which is essentially what we're reading on the 1 hour chart, where we then break that low, right, we come down like that, okay? And then we just do this one last example. So we have that 1 hour high, we then shift bullish to facilitate that 4 hour swing pullback, right? The black line, we come up into the premium, and then we break this low, all right? And a lower time frame structure, we can trade these lower highs and then target that weak swing low, which is a bit messy around. Eventually we break it below there. So hopefully you can kind of start to see, obviously price actions, it's never perfect. It can be a little bit messy, it can get a little bit choppy. Strong highs and lows aren't always respected, but overall, hopefully you can start to see how all of the time frames are very intimately connected. Okay, so we try to keep it simple at the start, right? Swing lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, right? You guys get it. But from within that, we then have multiple lower time frame structure. Then we form higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows. And then when that swing pullback is likely to finish, what do we look for? We look for the lower time frame to shift structure. Again, we expect that swing pullback to start. So what can we look for? We can look for the lower time frame to shift structure to the upside. When's that higher time frame pullback going to finish? We look for the lower time frame to shift structure. Okay, so basically, if you're looking to trade, or again, if you're looking at the higher time frame, right, ask yourself what phase are we within? If we have this move to the downside over here, and then the lower time frame structure starts to shift bullish, well, then we know that we're in the swing pullback phase of the higher time frame. So at that point, we can look to trade those higher time frame higher lows, right, and try and catch this. But we're a lot more aggressive with our targets because we know that we're playing the pullback phase, okay? But then when the lower time frame then shifts bearish and it realigns itself with the higher time frame swing structure, so they're both bearish, they're both aligned, now what phase are we playing? Well, now we're most likely playing the impulsive phase. So now we can look to catch those lower time frame lower highs and try and target a bit further, right? We can target down to the week low or potentially beyond, okay? Now, when we break that swing low to the downside, we're still in the impulsive phase, okay? But we have to understand that at any point, that next deeper swing pullback can start. So if we're still trying to short here or hold on to our positions, sometimes, as you can see here, it can fall for a long time. But what you want to do then is use the lower time frames to help guide you of when that next swing pullback may kick in. And how do we do that? Well, we just follow it. As long as it stays bearish, then those lower highs are respected, but eventually that's not going to happen and it shifts bullish, right? And then that's when we're now in the pullback phase, okay? And now we can look to catch those higher lows, but we're a bit more aggressive with our targets because we're just playing the swing pullback of that leg, right? That's being the swing leg. So at this point, you can put lines on as well. This can really help you, right? So you can, I have templates here, right? The 4-hour swing structure. So you put it from there. And at this point, when you're in the market, that's your strong swing high. And then you can do, so I put a line down here, right? Where we can make this your 4-hour week structure. And that's a little bit messy. We obviously wouldn't have all these colors on the real market, but essentially that's what's happening. So when you're within here, and then let me delete some of these orange lines, and the 1 hour chart, so in this case our lower time frame shifts bullish, we now know we're playing this swing pullback here. Okay, we know this is our 4-hour strong high, this is our 4-hour week low, so although we can play the pullback, we don't expect it to go any higher than that strong swing high. And as soon as then the lower time frame shifts bearish, what can we do? We can then follow those lower highs to then target that low. Right, rinse and repeat. We break structure, so at any point we're expecting that swing pullback. Wait for the lowest time frame to start shifting bullish, and then wait for it to be bearish. Once it shifts bearish, swing pullback starts to finish. Okay, so hopefully I haven't lost you with that. I know it can get a little bit messy when we try and do this for illustration purposes, but we try to keep it reasonably simple with just 2 timeframes here and just focusing on swing structure for now, because obviously what you've learned so far is you've learned the 3 types of structure: swing, internal, and fractal. And if you kind of try and apply all 3 of those types of structure in some, 3 different timeframes all at once, it can get quite confusing, because for some of you, you might have realized already that when you're looking at one time frame and you're using swing, internal, and fractal, that actually helps you to read multi-time frame analysis without actually having to change timeframes. Okay, so for now, kind of when we're going through this initially, I kind of just want your brain to be thinking, kind of just focusing on swing structure between those different timeframes like we have done here, right? We haven't really talked about fractal and internal so much. We're just seeing how the lower time frame structure shifts bullish and bearish to signal what's happening on the higher time frame, okay? So hopefully that makes sense. And now we'll go and look at another example.